Alright, what is good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute since I've seen you guys in this sort of format, me sitting down and having a discussion, but as things move forward, there's probably going to be a few more videos like this. Now, kind of keeping on topic of the past couple videos that I've been doing with the game day vlogs and everything, I've kind of wanted to get some discussion going around FCS football and the Big Sky Conference, mainly because there's not a whole lot of people on social media that are doing it. ESPN doesn't really give a whole lot of talk. A lot of the sports publications in general don't really give a whole lot of talk to the FCS. So I figured, why not try it? And if people like it, they want to hear the news, that's awesome. We're just gonna keep it moving. So the reason why I've kind of wanted to get this video going in this week in particular is because there's been a lot of movement in the polls. And not only a lot of movement, but there's been a lot of questions being raised about what is really going on in the FCS, at least like in the voting system for the polls. For those of you who don't know, just before I get too deep into it, now for those of you who don't know or don't care, the FCS is still Division 1. Now Division 1 football in the NCAA is broken down into subdivisions. You have the FBS and you have the FCS. Now the FBS obviously is the top. They're the ones that got like Alabama, Georgia, all of those schools, the top schools, the ones you're seeing on ESPN every weekend. Now the FCS has schools like Montana State, Montana, North Dakota State, South Dakota State. Still big schools that make a lot of wave, but they're just not up in that FBS division. So because of that, there's not a lot of coverage, and that's kind of what I've been wanting to do a little bit on my channel, but not fully dedicated, but have a little segment at least on this channel. This week, it's been kind of crazy. Now, I was saying we don't really have the privilege of having the Associated Press vote for polls. We have vote for our top 25. We have the coaches, and we have what's called the stats poll. Now, the stats poll has a committee and everything like that. Now, I feel like every week it comes out, it's just almost like, we just don't even know whether to take it seriously or not. It's just, it comes out and it's, there's some things that make sense on there and there's a lot of things that don't make any sense. It's kind of like what you can imagine from the actual FBS poll as well. However, I feel like a lot more thought and consideration goes into that. And this week raised a lot of issues in the fans of the FCS. It just, a lot did not make sense. To kind of touch base and kind of summarize a few things for those who don't really know particularly, the top three has pretty much been frozen. Now we got South Dakota State at number 1, North Dakota State at number 2, and Montana State at number 3. Now, North Dakota State and South Dakota State both had byes this last weekend. Pretty much the whole Missouri Valley had byes this last weekend, so they kind of stayed frozen in place. Montana State had a massive blowout victory over the number 10 team on the road, 40-0, so that was amazing. But since the two teams above them didn't raise or didn't change, they stayed in place. Now, I don't want to waste time talking about all of these things that actually make sense. Let's get to the things that don't make sense. So, and keep in mind, I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with, I'm going to keep an objective and unbiased stance on this, as much as I possibly can at least. So, our rival, cross-state rival, the Montana Grizz, have had questionable performance this season. Now, even Grizz fans I have seen on social media have said the exact same thing, so this isn't even just a Cat fan, the whole you suck thing coming from the rival. This is just like, this is calling how it is. So, to open off their season, they played Butler. Now, Butler is known for its basketball, but in football, not so much. They are part of the Pioneer Football League, which is a conference that does not award athletic scholarships. So the fact that we have a conference that exists in our division that does not award athletic scholarships is actually, I don't know if I really agree with it. It's kind of weird. I don't know how you can expect to compete, and when you're just being like, hey, you guys can come and go to school here, but we're not gonna help you pay for anything. We got great financial aid, but that's really it. It's usually a team that one of the Montana schools, or if not both of the Montana schools, will schedule a Pioneer Football League team every season. Now, I'm sure it's something that we're paying them a lot of money for. It's something for their strength of schedule, all of that. But it's usually something we whoop up on them. So this year, Montana State beat their Pioneer Football League opponent 57-20. So very, very impressive margin of victory, correct? That's what you'd expect from, playing a team as such. Now, Grizz hosted Butler, and they beat them 35-20. Now, they still a win, still a 15-point win, but to a lot of people, that is a lot closer than you'd expect from a Pioneer Football League school. So that was kind of initially written off. It was like, whatever, it is what it is. It happens. So the next game, they go down to St. George, Utah, and they play Utah Tech. Now that was a pretty solid victory, 43-13. That was another team that the Cats also blew out at home. The next weekend, September 6th, the Grizz host a Division II opponent, which I have not seen the Grizz host a lower division opponent in a long time. So the fact that they scheduled Ferris State was pretty impressive. Now, I remember seeing this on the schedule and seeing it stick out like a sore thumb to me because Ferris State is a really good D2 school. They're back-to-back national champs. They also have a national championship in basketball from 2018. By all means, and in a lot of people's eyes, they could probably make a jump to D1, but just because they've had success in D2 does not mean they're going to be successful in the FCS. For those of you guys who forget, Northern Colorado also had a lot of success in Division II with a back-to-back national championship. So yeah, they had back-to-back national championships in 96 and 97, and since they've jumped up to D1 into the Big Sky Conference, they've had 2 winning seasons, and each of those seasons were 6-5 records. They haven't made the playoffs, they haven't won a conference title or even a share of it in their entire history of joining the Big Sky Conference. So, and that was back in 2006. So after almost 20 years in the conference, they had just nothing to show for it. So just because you have success in D2 does not mean you're just going to immediately have success at the top. Now, the reason why I say that as a big sidetrack is because the Grizz really struggle with these guys the entire game. So Grizz only put up 3 points in the first quarter. They put up 0 in the second quarter, and Ferris State put up 0 in the first and 10 in the second. So going into half, it was 10-3 Ferris State. Grizz shut them out the entire second half to come back and win it 17-10. Now over a D2 school. Now everybody, including Grizz fans, did not even believe that they should have been in the top 25 after a loss like that, including myself. You don't struggle against a D2 school and a PFL school and still expect to be in the top 25. Now, mind you, they were only number 12 in the nation when they played Ferris State. So it's not like they're like, a top 5 or a top 10 school, which honestly, some might argue they should get judged a lot harsher if they're ranked higher, but nevertheless, I digress. So they struggle against a D2 school. They struggle against a PFL school. So now we're entering conference play. This is last Saturday, the weekend we just had. They go down to Flagstaff to play Northern Arizona, an 0-3 school, a school that got blown out by the team that the Grizz blew out, which is kind of impressive. So the Grizz struggled the entire game. We're not winning the entire game and wound up losing that to 28-14. Now, absolute devastating loss across the whole Grizz fan base. It was actually felt a lot through the Big Sky. I mean, it rocked the whole picture. The thing is, it kind of blew my mind, and this is where the issue comes into play. Is it only dropped them 5 points in the rankings. Now, they went from 13 because after that struggle with Ferris State, they dropped from 12 to 13. Now they went from 13 to 18. Still being in the top 25, let alone the top 20, is very impressive after a struggle of a schedule like that. Now people argue, they're 3-1. You have to start looking at strength of schedule here. Now this is what starts to come into play here. Are they looking at pedigree? Are they looking at dynasty? Are they looking at the history of these programs? Is that how they're making their judgment? Because none of those things have anything to do with the skill level that these teams have. Because if we're looking at pedigree, we're looking at history, then teams like even Idaho State should be seeing the polls. They had a national championship in their history. All of these things just don't really seem to pan out, and it's really starting to play into the fact that there's some serious favoritism going on. And I'm not trying to point those fingers, there's Grizz favoritism, but it's just like, when it comes down to a voting committee to decide on these things, you kind of have to wonder what is really going on. So, I don't know. It's just, it's something fishy, and I really just wish ultimately what I'm trying to the point I'm trying to make with this ultimately is it would really be nice to see some better system put into place to where it can be taken as seriously as the FBS. I know people argue, of course, there's like Alabama favoritism, and I've even seen it. There's all sorts of SEC favoritism going on in the polls, but also the fun fact is the SEC typically proves itself year in and year out. Now, the Grizz don't. That's the thing. And like I said, this is not me trying to just dunk on the Grizz to knock on the Grizz. This is not one of those types of videos. There's plenty of time all season for that. This is just coming out and just trying to look at it from an objective outside perspective and see what is really going on in these poll systems. And I know it's early season, So, you know, most of the polls you should really take with a grain of salt as is. But it's like, at what point do we, you know, at what point do we just stop taking the polls seriously at all and just say fuck it and just start coming up with our own shit in our head? Because at a certain point it's just not even going to matter, because even some some broadcasting channels will go with the coaches poll. Now in the FCS, I would never take the coaches poll over anything. It's just it's just completely blowing my mind. Now, a lot of people have freaked out about some other movement. I'm going to take it off of just the Big Sky favoritism. Western Carolina, who's been pretty much lights out the entire season, has seen some pretty serious, you know, disrespect in the polls. You know, but going back to Big Sky bias, I'm glad to see seven teams in there. But I kind of like to start seeing, like I said, you know, some more thought put into why these other schools are getting the votes that they're getting. And yeah, I don't really know where to go from there. I just kind of wanted to just kind of have a little discussion about it. Now, I might have just actually ranted, you know, and not, you know, rounded out my point as well as I thought I would have, but basically kind of brought it together at the end of kind of like, how much longer is this going to be until we in our own heads at least are being like, you know what, these rankings don't mean anything. If they're not going to take it serious, we're not going to take it serious. It's just going to be a number anyways, which I guess that's really what it is. Because we have a bigger playoff format in the FCS, so to a certain degree, depending on what conference you're in, some of these rankings don't really mean anything. But I don't know. It is what it is, and that's that. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you made it through to the end of this, I'm impressed, man. This is kind of a rant. But hopefully the reason why you did make it through is you're into it, and you like the FCS, and you like football, because I like all that shit. So, yeah, stay tuned. This is going to be a weekly thing. Kind of maybe even like a pre-weekend, post-weekend, 2 separate video type thing, because I want to get more on my channel, like I've said 100,000 times on this channel. But if you guys like it, smash that thumbs up, all that stuff that YouTubers say and everything like that. And yeah, I'll catch you next time. Peace. I filled up my life.